We're here in Eindhoven at the DAF Museum. We especially wanted to come here because Matt and I have a bit of an affinity with DAF. I passed my lorry driving test in a DAF truck, and Matt's wife, Sophie, had a DAF little car. So for you diecast lovers, we have lots of lovely diecast on display. And on the way out, with any good museum, you get to go to the museum shop and to buy some of these models. And that's what I'm really looking forward to at the end. I'm like a kid in a sweet shop here, folks. Oh, the Paris-Dakar one's down there, Matt. This is brilliant. For anybody that's into motor racing, you'll have seen on the TV, watching the Paris-Dakar, these enormous trucks as they make their way through a desert. And it's just to see them in the flesh. They're huge. I told you they were massive. I thought my van was big. Look at that. How do you even get here? This is brilliant. These DAF trucks were built for the extreme punishment of the Paris-Dakar, which meant not just one enormous shock absorber, but two. These were brilliant, brilliant vehicles. The suspension travel there, look, is longer than my forearm. I am in awe of this. And if you want, it was just going one way, come and have a look at the back. That's an unusual back end, isn't it? As a kid, I was fascinated with these humongous lorries. None more so than anything with the front end. If it had a nose on it, I was a sucker for it, because my real love affair was with American trucks as a kid. So things like Scania T-cabs and this DAF were exactly the kind of thing I would want to be in. And when my playtime with my Matchbox cars, I would imagine myself as driving a truck just like this. They did cars as well. These little cars were quite ingenious for the time, to say the least. They had a Variomatic, automatic, sort of weird gearbox system, which did cause a lot of problems, but didn't make them very cheap. And if you knew what you were doing, they weren't as bad as everybody thought to repair. I've got to say, I'm really super impressed with the place. But this is ace, Matt. DAF trucks were worldwide, but in Europe, they needed an answer to the Ford Transit. This really was it. Badged as a freight rover, LDV, and here a DAF. This van, and it was a van, was popular in all sorts of forms. You could get it as a box van, you could get it like we have here as a tipper, and you could also get it as a van. You would have seen these delivering your mail, delivering everything, milk floats, all sorts. Whatever your need, the DAF had it covered. Trucks really were an international thing. Now this was it was too big for the roads here in the Netherlands. However, if you went to the Middle East, this would have been a common sight and part of your childhood. They're brilliant trucks. Still used commonly out there today as well. They last really, really well, these trucks. Complete 70s nostalgia now. The DAF 66 Marathon just screams nostalgia. I love this model. It's a hint of a sports car from DAF here, with they had the checkered flag on the steering wheel. Absolutely brilliant. I forgot this actual model existed. The 66, I knew because they sold the design to Volvo and they used it for some years. But the Marathon, yeah, this is a real, one of those childhood memories has just gone ping, I remember this. Lovely thing. DAF and motor racing was something that's synonymous. If you ever watched truck racing during the 1980s, they were always, or seemingly always, at the front of the pack. And that's represented really well in the museum here. Here we've got one of the racing trucks. These were popular, they went all over. And as when you see, first thing you notice about them, how squat they are, how low they are to the ground. There's nowhere near the same gap as on a normal road truck. These were a pure track machine and brilliant at it as well. Imagine tonking one of these around a race circuit. Absolutely fantastic fun. Turbocharge your way through these adverts and come back soon. Striking similarity, eh? These racing trucks, honestly, I'm all over them. This is the kind of thing that captured my imagination. Seeing those dodgy helicopters of the 1990s and 1980s as they flew overhead. I remember always the filming of the Paris-Dakar was so difficult because it was such a vast event and there wasn't the things of today, GoPros, things like that. So it was very limited, the actual footage you got. So quite often you'd come across these trucks in bits, you know, having been into some huge hole, seemingly unable to get out of it, and yet they always seem to come out the other side. Absolutely brilliant. You can see actually the wall wounds on this one here. Not only is it dinged up all around the front, but at some point it's had a real bad front end issue there. Some bits of this one are held on with sticky tape. It's a bit like your Morris, Matt.
Cheeky.
They seemingly have everything here. Gentleman's grooming and wash bag. Yes, DAF said we can do that. That's wonderful. Imagine getting out of your truck after a long day and just getting all the heat off you with a nice cold flannel from your DAF truck's wash bag. Brilliant. They didn't stop there either. Glassware, crockery, they've done it all. The real life trucks and cars on display here aren't just the only thing. No, there are models as well from manufacturers such as Mini Champs, Corgi, Lion, kit-built models. The list goes on and on. I love this. This is brilliant. This is amazing. It's got my favourite things. It's got actual toys in it, and it's got the real thing as well. I just want to drive off in one. I'm looking at these Maybe toys. Is that? Yeah, I think so. This is just awesome. It wasn't just the trucks that they had. They also formed them into buses. Yes, passenger transport was the thing that they definitely wanted to be interested in. However, this, towing everyone behind you, is a little bit one of those things about, I don't know how legal that would be, certainly in the UK, to have everyone completely separate from the driver, but it looks fantastic. Buses have been part of DAF's heritage for many years. When you look at the difference between these two, you've got really the basics of this one, which for its time were really quite plush. But having driven a vehicle very similar to this, I can tell you as a driver, it's quite an uncomfortable affair. This one looks a bit more costing than the one I drove, but this, however, is completely different. I think you'd probably be able to drift off to sleep in this one. It's difficult to not be impressed, not only with the size of the place, or the amount of things in it, the condition of the trucks, and everything I'm seeing has been thoughtfully put together, lovingly curated. I love this place. This is without doubt the best car and truck museum I've ever been to. It's brilliant. This is stunning. I'm a bit in love, Matt, I'll be honest with you. First of all, it was this. I love this, it's beautiful, it's so cute. Colours are amazing. But then look what's sat next to it. Absolutely stunning. I love this sort of stuff. These sort of cars fashioned in the style of the Citroën Mahari, the Renault 4, they did that little jalopy, they did a Fiat 500 Jolly, and here we have a DAF version of the same thing. Look at the finish on it, it's so plush. Look at that, it looks like an Italian speedboat. I don't think it will float as well. There are cars that are very special in the world. You might think of cars and special as being things like Ferraris and Lamborghinis, but often it's the most humble of sights, the once common sight on the roads of Europe that tug at your heartstrings more than most. This little DAF 33 Shell van certainly does that for me. That would have been really a throwaway vehicle, a beast of burden, something which just did a job for a few years. So it's one of the rarest vehicles, and it's notable that nowadays this humble vehicle is now roped off from public view. Such a lovely sight. I'd rather have that than a Ferrari in my garage. This is where it all began for DAF. This was the actual trucks that would have been delivered to the customers. The customers would then go to a coach builder and get their body fitted to their own design, which meant they were able to use them for all sorts of different uses. We've got an actual workshop as well in here. This is a museum that is a working museum. So in here we've got various restoration projects going on, servicing work, maintenance. It's brilliant, and as well, it's just like a view into the past because all these guys are using old tools. You won't find modern tools in there. It's just a great place to come. The DAF City Car, or OSI, was memorialised in model form by Corgi Toys. but I've never actually seen one in real life. They had a sliding door on one side and an opposite opening door on the other side. Really ingenious for its time. Oh, how cool is that, just to actually see one? I mean, there's levels of comfort that I expect, and then there's this. Oh my life. It's absolutely huge, this museum. It just keeps on going and going and going, and I love every inch of it. It's a brilliant place. Pedal cars. As much of a turn on for the big kids as they were for the little kids back in the day. I've never ever seen another pedal car like this little DAF. For the person that had everything, sometimes you just didn't have enough. And that's the story of this car, the Moretti DAF. This was a customer. She wanted a DAF Variomatic. Only DAF would do. But she wanted 4 doors. So off to Moretti for some ideas, and this is what came back. A Fiat-derived DAF Variomatic with a rather Rolls-Royce sort of Bentley-style grille and fantastic leather interior. As with a lot of these things, it didn't work very well. There was only one ever made. But just shows you, if you really want it, somebody will build it. The DAF Porter was one of these vehicles. We've just seen one-off. This isn't quite a one-off, but this was made for the military and was made to go on the water, through the water, basically through anything. It never actually made production, but there are prototypes out there. This is one of very, very few left known to exist. What was interesting about it, it was powered by an engine which powered just the central wheel. It then powered not only these wheels by rubbing against them, it also had a propeller on the back and a rudder so you could steer. It's a fantastically clever vehicle and looks like a lot of fun. Sort of tank steering as well. So you one side you go one way, other side you go the other. Brilliant, lovely thing. Famous car is this, the DAF 55 rally car. Had quite a long career actually, 1968 to sort of early 90s. This actually ran in its own class almost, but brilliant little thing. Lombard RAC rally as well. Fond memories of that as a kid, watching the Lombard RAC rally. Yeah, this is really, really lovely. And what I love about it, it's got the patina, it's got the look of a rally car. It looks like it's just finished a special stage and it's come in sweating. Absolutely brilliant. DAF always have a strong interest. In fact, more than interest, an obsession with rallying. This car in particular I want to point out, the DAF 555. You couldn't buy this anywhere if you were a normal person on the street. You had to be a racing driver. You might as well have been one of the Formula 3 drivers that would have taken this kind of machinery out onto the circuits of Europe. Absolutely fabulous, very, very fast, and just for racing, just like the DAF 555. What a fabulous looking vehicle this is. At pains to point out, this is also a Variomatic. When you come and look at the back of the car, you'll see the bands driving it there. It's just fabulous. What a beautiful car to look at as well. That camel trophy colours of the yellow with the brown, it's so iconic, just like this DAF. The DAF Variomatic transmission shown here with its twin belt system. It really was a groundbreaker at the time, but proved a little problematic. Some engineers would refuse to work on them after a while, so they changed. Bosch invented the CVT system. The CVT system powered everything from your humble DAF and Nissan Micra right through to your Formula 1 Williams of 1993. Yes, this is a World Championship winning automatic gearbox. So this is year dot. Car production here in Eindhoven. Car 1, this beautiful little DAF 600. Car 2 though has a rather special story attached to it. Here we see the first mayor of Middelburg, a city nearby. So beloved was she by the people that lived and worked in the city, they saved up, they got money together, enough to buy her a little car. And this, the second DAF off the production line, is the car. What the people of the city didn't realise is their dear mayor, so beloved that she was, didn't actually have a driving licence. So actually one of her assistants had to drive around in it for a few months until she actually passed the test herself. One of the earliest known right-hand drive DAFs. This one came from South Africa, recently discovered when the owner rang to find out if they could get any spare parts. And when they found out the chassis number and the details, the people at DAF were astonished to find quite how old this car actually was. So what did they do? Well, they had to buy it, and the opportunity arose a few years later. The expense of shipping a car all the way from South Africa to here in the Netherlands was quite considerable. So this would have been quite an expensive DAF, probably one of the more expensive of the standard DAF cars in the collection. When I think DAF and I think of the actual manufacturer, I think 1970s, because that was, I suppose, was my childhood and seeing them around. And the colours are really on display here. From the beautiful brown, deep brown that we have, to this wonderful yellow, through to this orange. It just screams 1970s. I love it. The DAF 66 was used for everything. You could get it like this, or as a fastback, like this. Or in an estate version, like this. Even Volvo did their own 66. From the humble small cars that DAF produced, you also got these little coupes. These are, without a doubt, some of my favourite things here today. Just extremely pretty to look at and a beautiful sight. Continuing in another series of things that Joe is too fat for, this little DAF, known as the Mobile Raincoat, which is the best sort of working title for any car ever, is one of one. Made in the 1940s, this was really where it all began as regards motor vehicles. This wasn't a production car, but it did have a number of ingenious features. One door, access was via the other side of the car, and the steering, the engine was connected directly to the steering here. So essentially, if you turn the wheel all the way around, you would disappear backwards. So as a safety device, the steering was connected to the little mascot there. So you could always tell, because when you turned, the mascot turned as well. Before the Mobile Raincoat, as it was lovingly called, was restored here, this is what it did. It was used as a circus car. Absolutely ingenious, and it's no wonder that DAF became the success story that it did. And of course, no trip to any museum is complete without a visit to the gift shop. So that's it. Thanks for watching this episode of Toy Spawn. Toy's been a bit different, hasn't it? But it's been great fun. We've really enjoyed looking around the DAF Museum today. Sadly, they didn't allow us to buy any of the vehicles in there, so we're just gonna have to make do with going home in Old Faithful here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Stop!